Are you tired of misaligned body lines like these, where it's wide at one end and narrow at the other? Are you tired of doors that sag and don't match up and don't close properly? Well, you're in luck. I'm gonna show you how to fix that today with new door pins and bushings. Stay tuned. Let's start by opening the door and rolling down the window. This will provide you with many easy to grab locations for your helper to hold on to the door. Next, we'll get our floor jack in place with a nice large block of wood. We'll want to get this block about halfway down the door to evenly support the weight of it. We're using a block so we don't mess up the paint or scratch the door at all. So now that you've seen the door lift up a little bit, it means that some of the weight is off of the door. Actually, I'm going to move this farther forward a little bit. All right, so now we have the door supported and the window down. And the first thing that you should look for is to see if you still have your door spring in here. I do not. This pin here that is supposed to come down a little bit farther to catch into this door locking spring here. Well, that pin's broke, and the spring normally comes in right back here. It doesn't exist, so I don't have to worry about that, and I'm not worried about putting a new one in, because as you see, I'm on a flat level surface. My door stays open anyway. However, if you do have this spring, you need to go buy this tool. I'll put a link in it, either at the end of the video or in the description. But all it is like 2 bars with a nut on it, and you tighten it up and it comes together. But you stab that into the spring, you tighten up the nut, take the spring out, and then you proceed. And then whenever you go to put it back together, you got to tighten that spring down real good, stick it back in here, and release it. So that's the only thing that I'm not showing on this video. Now that the weight of the door is supported, first thing we need to do is get this retaining clip off the top of here. There you go. After you beat it up enough with your flathead screwdriver, you can usually get it off with some needle nose. The next step is to beat the door pin down. I'm not always a fan of using your new component to drive out your old component, because it could lead to some amount of damage, but in this case it really does fit the bill. I'll set that on there, drive the pin a little bit farther. There we go. I have the pin part of the way down. It's almost clearing the top of the first hinge, and the pin is down here, so I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver to try to pry it down farther. There we go. Now you can pull this wiring harness and loom a little bit and wiggle your pin out either behind it or in front of it. And there you have it. This is the factory pin. You can tell because it has a body color paint on it, white, just like my truck. You can see where the bushing normally rides. It's actually worn down quite a bit. There's a lip or a step. When you rub your finger across here, it should be nice and smooth. This one has been worn into considerably. So I'm not going to show you this part because it's redundant, but this pin on the bottom also needs to come out. The only thing different is it's upside down, so it drives in from the top, so you got to drive it out from the bottom. So once again, there's a little clip underneath there. Pry that off, take a hammer, keep this pin up and out. You can also adjust the pressure on your door up and down if it's binding up, or get your helper to grab the back side of the door to lift up or down or wiggle to help you get that out. Just watch your fingers and be careful. Good luck. I got the bottom door pin out and the top door pin out pretty good. I don't have a helper, which is unfortunate right now, so my toolbox is going to help me. Yay. So the goal at this point is to slide this door back, and that will separate the hinges. Try to get you a good action shot. I need to go just a little bit farther. Maybe scoot it straight back. There we go. See, this bushing is actually not existent on top. It's still existing in the center, but it should have this lip on there. It doesn't. And you can see where the metal's been rubbing on the hinge. So this side, the paint is undisturbed. Okay, so on the bottom, the bushings are actually on the door side. And they appear to be okay, but we're gonna go ahead and replace all of it. Use a flathead screwdriver. If you have a different tool, that's fine. Normally, you'll have to press this one up and out because it has that lip, but mine doesn't, so I'll just knock it out the bottom. And he's out of there. Now I'll do the same thing for the bottom bushings. Go ahead and beat those out, and then we'll put the new bushings in. So I got all the old bushings out. Now let's take a look at our new bushing kit. Each bushing kit will have a small bushing and a large bushing, a retainer clip, and a pin. It's all set together. This is about how it looks. Large bushing goes on the larger diameter section of the pin. Smaller bushing will sit down here on the smaller diameter section. And there's this little groove. What's going to happen is we're going to press this clip onto there, and that's what's going to keep the pin from falling out. So to start, we need all 4 of our bushings. So now we're ready to put our bushings in. Let's start with the top here and clean the area. Make sure there's no debris inside of this hole where the bushing's going to sit. And do the same for the bottom. So now we're nice and cleaned up. So depending on how long your door has been messing up, you may need to look at these holes and make sure that they're not oblonged. If they are oblong, you might need to drill them out and put in larger bushings. However, when you notice that your door starts to sag and becomes hard to shut, and you change out these bushings relatively quickly, you won't have that issue. So +1 for preventative maintenance. So as I stated before, there's 2 different size bushings, big one and a small one. These holes, this is a small hole, this is a big hole. We'll take our small bushing first. Our small bushing goes down into the small hole. To get it centered, just gently tap it in. All right, be very gentle with these bushings. They are somewhat fragile. You don't want to break your brand new bushings. All right, so now your large bushing will go up from the bottom. One little trick you can use to help it get in there is to use your old pin to get it started. All right, now tap the old pin back out. And you can even use the top of the old pin to make sure that your top bushing is flush. Alright, that looks good. And that looks good. Now, the bottom is actually pretty much the exact opposite of the top. So the bushings will be sitting on the door side of the hinge, and also the larger diameter bushing will be on the top, and the smaller diameter bushing will be on the bottom. To get started, the large bushing sits in from the top with this lip on top of the door side of the hinge. Once again, I'm going to use the old door pin to set this bushing in place. Next, we have the small bushing. Small bushing will have the lip underneath, and it will come in from the bottom of the door side of the hinge. This one tends to be somewhat tricky. I'll use the old pin to help me drive it in. Be as careful as possible when driving these bushings in, because they do break easily, and this one actually has a little crack in it. It's unfortunate. So now that we have all the bushings in, there's one more thing we need to do before we proceed. We're going to apply some grease to the inside of the bushings. This will increase the lifespan of your new bushings and pins. Do the same for the top. Alright, now that our bushings are greased, we're going to try to align the door. Once again, it's very helpful to have a second person here for this part. This is certainly not a requirement, but I do like to lubricate the contact areas on the pin as well. And the bottom pin will be inserted from the top One thing I did forget to mention, go ahead and make sure that this is back in the recessed position before you slide the door back in. There we have it. The bottom hinge is in place. Just keep tapping it until it bottoms out here. It will not go any farther. And now we're going to do the top hinge. Remembering that the top hinge actually goes in from the bottom. Now we're ready to put our retaining clip on. I'll be using a 14mm socket to help guide it on. At this point, you can also let down your jack a little bit to put some tension on these pins. That way when you start hammering this retainer clip on there, it doesn't just push the pin back out of the hole. Set our retainer in place, set our socket on top, and give it a couple good whacks. We're not fully seated yet. There it is. Now I'll use a 13mm socket to drive it the rest of the way on. That's how the retainer should look when it's fully seated. It should be flush at the bottom and right inside of the groove on the pin. Alright, so I put my retainer on there, get my 14mm socket, give it a couple of taps. Alright, so this one's being a pain in the butt, so I'm going to use a wobble extension. Make this a little bit easier. There we go, it's set in place. Just to show you what I was doing here, just in case you need to replicate. Got that on there, got the extension going down underneath here to where I can hit it with a hammer. I need to pop our wire loom weather stripping back into place on both sides. Okay, so now that both of the retainers are on the pins, we can go ahead and remove the jack and clean up our work area. So now we'll check the fitment of the door. That closes easily. You can see that the body lines are restored to where they should be. Our gap is still a little bit bigger in the top than it is at the bottom, however. That may be a separate issue. But you can see that this door closes easily and lines up well. Alright, so that's how you change the door pins and bushings in your 90s model GM truck, whether it's GMC, a Chevy, a Tahoe, a Suburban. This is applicable to all of those. So thanks for watching. I hope this was useful to you. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And as always, dude, we can fix it.